Okay, welcome back to Gryphon Studio. I built a house. Okay, so I built a house. Been really busy this week. Obviously my job is still ongoing during this whole pandemic. So doing that and building this, been a busy week, and this video might go out a little bit late as a result. I am sorry, but I'm going as quick as I can. So, a few things. There's a few barrels and crates out the front of this house that I didn't film because I didn't make them. They were precast resin pieces which I'd bought a long time ago, but I thought I would just paint them up and stick them on for speed and convenience. And also the window panes, I didn't film that, which I should have, but it happened, and I will try and explain during the video exactly how I did them. I will say that I took a few bits of inspiration from Black Magic Craft. He's great YouTuber, and there's a few techniques of his you could say maybe pioneered by him, but certainly I borrowed a few of his ideas and tried to replicate them. Didn't do that good a job on it, but I tried. I gave it a go, and yeah, hopefully hopefully it looks pretty good as a result anyway. So that's it. I will crack on with the footage, and yes, see you all in a bit. Alright, let's start with the walls. I'm going to be using XPS foam for this, and these are all 5 inches wide by 3 inches tall. Making this thing more or less a square, however I'm going to add some corner pieces in the form of balsa wood, and they're about maybe just over half an inch wide. So this thing will end up being a bit more of a rectangle. But we're going to texture these XPS foam pieces, and for that I'm going to use a few of these little plastic rods that I've got. Usually my technique is this: I just stamp them in, and I change the orientation occasionally, make a few muddled patterns, make it kind of random. It's a good idea just to mix it up a little bit. Gives the wall a bit of a more interesting look, I suppose. So this is just a technique that I'm going to be using. If I zoom out a little bit, I'll flip these over. Here's some I prepared earlier. I've left a space here for the door and a little bit there for a window. I'm not quite sure where the other windows are going to be just yet, but I definitely wanted a window on the front of the house, so that's why I've left that space. These are the balsa wood sections for the corners. As you can see here, the grain is very exaggerated because I've already gone over this one with a wire brush. These are going to be cut into 3-inch lengths, as I've marked up there with a pencil, and these will serve as the corner posts for the house or the cottage. So here I'm taking a wire brush, just exaggerating the grain. See, there's no grain there. Wire brush and instant wood grain. The good thing about balsa wood is it already has a bit of a grain to it, but doing the whole wire brush method just accentuates it and allows it to pick up the paint that you're going to apply later. Here I'm just going to slowly take off a few bits on the corners to make it look like it's been kind of hand cut, hand hewn if you like, and that'll give it a bit more character. Now the troublesome thing about balsa wood is it's quite weak. However, chunky bits like this are actually fairly sturdy and they're really quite easy to work with. So a saw will go through this in a matter of seconds. So if you've got a vise, then use a vise like I've done. Here I'm going to add some windows using an X-Acto blade. do multiple passes to get through the foam. It seems to be the best method, and it kind of gives a better finish on the cut as well. I've got some graphics medium wet chipboard here. I've just scored along the back and bent it so that it will sit over the end sections of the house, creating a roof. So you can obviously bend this into shape quite easily. I wanted a bit of a slope on the roof as well, so that's easily done with some chipboard. These are the Balsa Wood sections I'm attaching now, and just using hot glue for this. Very quick, very easy. Now it goes without saying that you should really try and keep these walls square when you attach these side pieces to the end pieces. Really keep it perpendicular and get some good right angles going on, like so. And then we can add the roof to the end sections over the top and use some hot glue for that. And now we're getting a bit more of a house shape coming through. Now obviously I've messed up a little bit here because the top of the roof doesn't sit so nicely on the side walls, so I'm going to have to fix that later. But for now I'm going to add some support beams to the exterior of the build. Now you can use coffee stirrers, or you can use some very thin XPS foam, or cardstock or whatever, but I'm going to use balsa wood because I've got balsa wood, and I'm going to do the usual wood grain technique all the way along it with a wire brush to get some really good texture. And then, as you'll see, I've prepared some earlier, and the idea is here just to go around the windows and doors with some kind of interesting details, I suppose. And I'm going to use a hot glue gun again just to secure these in place, and I'm going to run them along and then trim them off. Seems to be the easiest way. What is probably fairly apparent to most of you right now is that I am in fact making this build up as I go along. There was no plan for this, I didn't design anything prior, I didn't make any drawings, I just kind of started making something. I didn't really know what I was going to build. I decided on a house because I haven't made one in a while, and I thought maybe this would be a good chance to try a few new techniques. I've been watching lots of different tutorials and things, and I do need the occasional building for gameplay, so I decided on a house, and it turned out to be this house. So right there I'm just trimming a few corner bits off the planks just to give it a bit more character, like it's been hand cut with an axe or something. And again, side beams on, then trim them off. Now I decided on some windows, so it's just a case of taking your time and popping them out. And because I'm making this up on the spot, I think I'll have a window there. As I was building this, I had an idea for the back wall, so I think I won't put any windows on that one just yet. So add a few more supports around the window frames. Nothing fancy, same old method as before. Now, because I didn't plan ahead, I'm not particularly happy with the way the roof is sitting. I want it to be kind of chunkier, bulkier, and kind of so that it meets the outside walls. The corner supports kind of ruined my roof design, but I've applied a few bits of XPS foam just to thicken it out, and it made it a little bit stronger as well. Now for roof shingles, I'm going to use XPS foam. About 1.5mm thick, and I'm going to texture it with a wire brush. When you're doing this, you'll find that the foam takes a texture better in one direction than the other direction. That's because there is a grain to the foam, so try and find the grain if you can, and run the wire brush along that grain. Then just trim out some lengths, and these are going to be cut again into kind of shorter strips like this, and they're going to be your shingles. You want them to be kind of long so that you can overlap them easier. This isn't necessary for most buildings. I think you hardly ever need a base for a building, but I wanted to add a few interesting features to the outside of the house. So I took a piece of expanded PVC or FOAMEX and I beveled the edge, and it's really useful stuff. It's very strong. It doesn't warp. It doesn't absorb glues and things, so that it won't bend and twist as the glue dries. It's really useful stuff. So here I'm going to add a chimney stack. Now I've got a lot of pre-cut and pre-textured bricks. These were just sitting around in a drawer that I had, and I'm just going to hot glue them around the back of the house. The house isn't stuck down yet. I'm just going to use the house for guidance for the chimney. I'm just going to kind of randomly place bricks into a vague shape of a chimney stack. As you can see, I've made a start on the roof shingles there, but I needed to fit the chimney first so that the roof shingles didn't interfere too much with the brickwork that I was trying to build here. So I'm just going to slowly build this up into a vague shape of a chimney, kind of getting narrower as it goes up to the top. Oh, magic, look at that. And then I'll show you the shingle fitting technique. Hot glue gun and stick it on. That's pretty much it. Now I will say I absolutely love hot glue guns, but also I hate hot glue guns because I'm sick of all this glue that just it gets everywhere. Little tiny wisps in that. Alright, so every house needs a door. I'm going to use balsa wood again. I'm just going to use a pin here on the end of a paintbrush handle, and I'm going to kind of carve in where the planks are going to be. So just going to gently score into the balsa wood. Balsa wood's very soft and doesn't need a whole lot of pressure. So after I've carved the planks in, I can take a wire brush and texture those planks in the same way as I did the other wooden beams before. Just going to give it a bit more texture. Otherwise, I think the paint might not show up the very fine grain that Balsa Wood has. So, and then I'm taking an old paintbrush handle with a sharpened tip. I'm just going to run it along those lines to give it an extra bit of depth and a bit of texture. Really simple wooden door. Now I always find hinges to be pretty tricky for doors, so I just printed some out on some cardstock and I cut them out very carefully with an X-Acto blade. This does take a fair bit of time and patience and accuracy, so just kind of be really careful with it. It's very easy to rip these. And then the idea was just to glue them down with super glue. I ended up using a little bit of PVA, to be honest, because it was just easier to work with, and that was pretty much it. There should be enough. Now a door needs a door handle, so I cut out a tiny square of plastic card or styrene sheet, then drilled a hole with a rotary tool through the middle, and I got a wire and I bent it into a loop and then kind of fed that through the square, and you basically got yourself a door handle. Now for the window panes, this is pretty much the only part that I filmed on the window panes, but I'm using a piece of clear plastic from old packaging, and I'm using some plasterer's tape, which is kind of like a mesh, and I'm just placing it and gluing it to the plastic packaging with some UV resin, just rolling it out there with a very tiny cocktail stick rolling pin, and then curing it with the UV light. Now you need some texture on this base, so I'm just going to apply PVA to the whole thing and then cover all that in my usual basing sand, which is the same stuff I use on models and terrain and pretty much everything. And obviously when you're working with foam, you've got to protect it. It is pretty brittle, pretty weak, and it's not chemically stable when it's in contact with things like solvents and glues and whatnot, so I mod podged and black paint the whole thing. And it also helps toughen up the very delicate shingles, which are like a millimetre thick, so that's always a good step to do. Here I'm just going to pick out a few bricks to paint in a slightly different colour other than grey, so I'm getting a few browns, sort of vanillas, ivories, tans, and some dark browns, and even a bit of a blue I think goes in. So I'm just going to pick up some random bricks, paint them different shades. This will just help give the stonework a little bit of a different texture and a bit of an interesting look that isn't just boring and grey. Alright, it's time to dry brush, so I'm going to use a couple of different greys here. They're just kind of a medium grey and light grey. Mixing them together, and I'm just going to dry brush pretty heavily over all of the stonework, everything that would be bricks. So over the whole thing, and really pick out all that interesting brick texture that you've created. and now for the woodwork. I'm adding some burnt sienna there to some kind of just a basic yellow, and I wanted like a kind of a golden brown colour. I got this idea from another YouTuber called Black Magic Craft, and it seems to work really well for him, and I thought I'd give it a go. As you'll find out, that mine doesn't quite turn out the same, but not to worry, it seemed to look okay in the end anyway. So I'm going over all of the woodwork around the windows, the doors, the support beams, the roof shingles, and yeah. When it dries though, you'll notice that it goes a lot darker, which is what I intended, to be honest. And here I'm just going to dry brush all of that wood with a grey. See, what you'll find mostly usually is that wood isn't really that brown when you really look at it. There's actually a very distinctive grey silvery highlight on wood texture pretty much all the time, and the idea was that I was going to create that same effect here by doing this quick dry brush, but it was looking very light, which I expected, so it's time for the wash. I use my normal black brown wash, which I use on pretty much everything, so any dungeon tiles I make, or pretty much any scenery, not models, but just any terrain that I make gets the same wash treatment. And I'm just really trying to work that into all the texture by kind of prodding it into the grooves that I've made there. Goes over all the wood and all the brick, the entire thing. You can of course go around after you've applied the wash with a cotton bud and pick up any bits that have pooled. And I'm just trying to work it all into the shingle texture. Now the base needed a kind of an earthy look, so I used VALLEJO earth base coat for this. So I mixed it with a lot of water just to really preserve the amount of paint that I was using for a start, and also, you know, it's quite a thick, quite a well covering paint. You don't really need it to go on too thick with just on a base. Now that wash really darkened down the building, which is what I was after, but I really wanted to lighten up just the very edges of the shingles and the woodwork. So I went over it with a very gentle dry brush in grey, and this I think really helped the look. Now we're going to move on to some foliage. So this is the reason why I applied the base in the first place, really. I'm just going to add some clump foliage from I think it's Woodland Scenics there, and using some PVA glue, or tacky glue would probably be better. And then I'm going to move on to some moss. Now to make moss, I'm going to use Woodland Scenics Fine Turf burnt grass colour, and mix it with some PVA glue into a kind of a paste, and then just kind of spread it against the brickwork. And to be honest, I spread this stuff everywhere, on the tiles, on the bricks, the chimney, up the side of the wooden supports, on the floor, everything. I've also added a few flowers there. These are just self-adhesive flowers that came exactly as is. And you also notice I've added a few crates and barrels out the front. Those are just pre-cast resin pieces that I'd previously painted up, and I thought they'd add a good bit of interest to the outside of the building. So here I'm just adding the static grass. I'm going to add two different colours of static grass. This is kind of a dry grass or a burnt grass, and then I'm going to use a kind of a yellow dead grass. It's always a good idea to mix up your colours of your flock. Really gives a lot more of a dynamic appearance. And there we go, all finished. Obviously added the window panes as well. There we go, all done. Yeah, that's all for this video. If you are one of those people that leaves me comments, then I am very, very grateful for them. Please, I really want you to know that they are very much appreciated, and I do try to reply to every single one of them if I can. Anything from constructive criticism to general compliment based messages, or inspiring moments of inspiration and things. I'm really happy to receive all of those kinds of messages, so please feel free to keep them coming. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like, comment and subscribe, and ring the little bell and all that stuff, and hopefully I can get back to you guys with a new video very, very soon. That's all for this one though. I'll see you again next time. Happy crafting.